Darby Vannier, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
I appreciate being here, Jonathan. It's great to be with you.
It's a pleasure to be with you today. You're joining us from Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. And today we're going to be talking about the power of past experience to current and future success. Of course, the best indicator of future success is past success, but we're all works in progress. We're all trying to learn and grow constantly. We're trying to reskill and upskill our competencies and capabilities. And so it's a matter of leveraging opportunity for growth and learning so that we can drive future success for ourselves in our personal lives, at work, as well as for our teams, for our organizations. So this is what we'll be discussing and unpacking together today. As we get started, I wanted to share Darby's bio with everybody. Darby Vannier has over 20 years of experience in leadership development and strategic consulting. He has led effective teams of more than 100 employees, coached others into their own leadership positions, and created stability during challenging organizational transitions. Darby built his career on the philosophy that developing the right people is the key to success. And I completely agree with that philosophy. Again, it's a pleasure to be with you. Anything else you would like to share with me or my listeners by way of your background or personal context before we dive on in further?
Yeah, no, I think we're going to get into some of it. I've kind of had a pretty diverse career. I've spanned the gamut of retail management and nonprofit management and professional services organizations as well. So we'll talk about some of that, I think, as we get into it.
Great. So why don't we start by just exploring this idea of past experience, how we can leverage that, because again, we all have pain points, we all have trauma, we all have challenges, disappointment, the difficulties that are just a part and parcel with life and the human condition. And so, building upon the pain and the trauma is one way of looking at past experience. But then there's also when things go really well, and sometimes we have tremendous success. And then it's about how do we build off of that success? How do we leverage that success to get more success? And it's always interesting to me. I'm fascinated by two types of narrative arcs and stories of successful people. I'm fascinated by the person who has just really struggled and they've overcome challenges and trauma and all sorts of things to really just make something amazing out of their life and be impactful to those around them and in the workplace. I'm just fascinated by those types of individuals and those types of leaders. I'm also really fascinated by those who just have incredible amount of talent. They're like prodigies. Everyone expects super high things from them. They have super early career success. Maybe it's sports, maybe it's corporate or whatever. And then for whatever reason, it doesn't work out. They just kind of fall off a cliff and you never hear from them again. And you find out later that they've just had setback after setback. And it's fascinating. It's heartbreaking to see people go through that. And then I guess you have the third type, and that's those who come from privilege, those who have a ton of talent, natural, innate talent, who then build off of that to leverage, this rocket ship career to just do amazing things. And I guess you have all different types of people across the spectrum of all those three kind of archetypes, each of which are super interesting, each of which, demonstrate a different kind of past and how we're going to build upon it. So why don't we start there and just how do you make sense of this idea of the power of past experience, to informing current and future success?
Yeah, so I think you covered it really well, John. If you think about that, first off, I'm going to say, and you alluded to it, the thing behind all of this is we all have our own stuff going on in our lives. So the people you work with, the employees that you have underneath you, your coworkers, your bosses, everybody you interact every day has their own crap going on in their lives, stuff that you don't know about, that you'll never know about. No matter how well you know somebody, there's always something else going on in their lives, whether it's positive or negative. So there's lots of things that impact people. And when I talk to individuals and I coach young leaders in particular, and we talk about past experience, it's something that affects all of us that most people don't really realize unless they really sit down and think about it. And as you alluded to, it can be something negative in your past or something positive in your past, and either can affect you positively or negatively. So let me give you an example of this from my own career, and it's something that I talk about in my book. And that is, when I started my career, I started with working at a 22 screen movie theater, an AMC movie theater in Kansas City. So brand new to my career, new into my position. And part of one of your duties as a manager, because this was a huge theater, so there was several managers, but part of your duties were, as you were a closing manager, after you do all your business part, your managerial stuff, you have to make sure everything else is done, obviously. Well, on Thursday nights, this is in the day before digital movies. So on Thursdays, they would deliver the new movies for the next week that were opening on the following Friday. And they would come on like 6 or 8 small reels of film. And basically the projectionist would have to take those 6 reels and go through a process called building up, where they actually splice all those together into one giant reel that sits on this big platter. It's like a big plate. And they had to do that with all of the movies. And then all the movies that were leaving, they had to do the reverse of that. So take them apart, put them back on their individual reels, and put them in the cans to go. So a lot of managers would just finish their duties and just wait around for the projectionist. But I always went and helped, because I trained in all of the areas and I couldn't leave until they were finished. So I figured I would always help. So I always went out and helped. So at 2 or 2:30 in the morning, when I finished all of my duties on Thursday night, I went and I was helping this projectionist. And so I'm tearing down one of these movie prints. And basically you take the film and you put it on the small reel, and there's a dial that you can turn, that you can speed up and slow down how fast it winds back onto the reels. And so it's the big platter is spinning and it's going onto the reels. Well, the movie print's held into the platter with this metal ring that has pegs. And evidently this morning, that ring must not have had the pegs down into the platter, because I spun this thing up and I was going to get done quickly and it was flying along. And all at once, I saw this whole movie print just fly off, like off into the projection booth. And if you have those moments in your life where it's slow motion, that's what it was like. You're like, ah. So here I am staring at this movie print on the floor, and it's not something that you can just pick back up and put on and start over. If you think about like a 2,000 or 3,000 foot extension cord, and you just jumble it all up and throw it on the ground, or your Christmas lights when you're trying to untangle them, that's kind of what it's like. So I spent the next, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 hours pulling strands of film out of this and cutting it and unknotting the next piece and splicing that back together and pulling more out. By the time I was done, I had literally hundreds and hundreds of splices in this movie print that was going to be sent back. And I was sure that I was going to be fired. So at like 7 or 7:30 in the morning, I got done with this and I went home and I showered. And I came immediately back because my managing director was going to be in at 9. And I stood outside of his office, looking at his office door like, okay, this is it. This is the end of your career here. This is a great start to your career. And I went in and I explained the whole thing to him. And he looked at me and he said, Darby, I appreciate you coming in and telling me. Looks like, you're tired and you have to be back in tonight. So go home and get some rest. And that was it. And basically what it came down to is that he knew that I did everything that I could do. He knew that I was stressed out. He wasn't going to make it any worse. And there's nothing else that could be done, even though I am quite sure that I probably cost the theater thousands of dollars, because I'm sure we had to pay for this. It didn't turn out how I thought it was going to turn out. I obviously made it worse in my mind. And here's the other thing about it. This is the other, not just the power of that experience, which I'm going to get into, but also the power of moments that you as a leader may think are insignificant, because I have no clue, but to him, he may not even remember this story, this managing director. He may not even remember. It may have been totally insignificant to him, but to me, it was hugely significant. So we as leaders have to remember that everything we do is being looked at in a different way, that something you think may not be important may be very important to somebody else. But what that interaction did for me was it changed the entire way that I have led throughout my entire career. Because guess what? As I have led people and managed people and have them mess up, because everybody messes up, you know how I have managed that situation? Exactly the same way. I don't get too excited about things. I want to know what they did to fix it or what we're going to do to fix it, and how we move forward. I can't change the past. So let's talk about and go forward. Now, we're going to have a discussion about how it happened and how you make sure that it doesn't happen again. And obviously, I don't want you to make that mistake too many times in a row. But I'm not going to punish you for a single mistake. And I know, like, I've had people standing on the other side of my desk in the way I did when I was that young kid. And they were looking at me the same way, like, holy crap, I am totally fired. And I know that's what they're thinking. But the cool thing is I'm able to actually tell this story, which I have actually told several times to different people that have worked for me in my career. And this is a perfect example. So the things that we have to think about, even the ones that are insignificant, or you may think are insignificant to you, they do affect your whole life, your personal life and your professional life. So our experiences affect how we think, and how we think affects how we act, and how we act affects how we actually get results and succeed in life or don't succeed in life. So you can use a very negative experience, which for me at that point, that was a very negative experience at the time, to create a positive in the future. But you also have to be careful, because you can also use negative or positive experiences and actually turn it into a negative later. So those are things you have to think about as well.
Yeah, thank you for that experience and that story. And it could have just as easily gone the other direction to impact you, right? You could have been chewed out and screamed at, and maybe it's not your personality to ever be like that yourself in the future. But, I see a lot of leaders who don't really know much about leadership. They just find themselves in a role. And what do they tend to do if they haven't, really been developed or trained into how to be a good leader? They tend to they tend to replicate what they've seen modeled to them in the past. And so even if your natural inclination would not be to be that kind of a leader who chewed people out and screamed at them for messing up, if that's how you've experienced it at influential periods in your life, chances are you're going to do that at least a bit more than what your natural inclination might be. And ultimately, it perpetuates this negative cycle. And so your boss handled it calmly, recognized your intentions were good, your efforts were there, you did everything you could to make it right, you were honest, you owned up to the mistake. Like, all those things are really positive characteristics and attributes. So your boss could recognize that, give you the benefit of the doubt, recognize this is going to be a learning experience for you. And then that positively influences you as you carry on in your life to build off of this one mistake that was a learning opportunity to then do things better in the future. And if you've been chewed out, you lose the job, you go on, you find something else, you live your life. But that negative taste in your mouth is going to stay a long time. And chances are it's going to have ways of influencing you in the future, even unconscious ways that you're not fully aware of. So that's a really, really great example. And again, we as leaders just need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to recognize the value that our people are bringing to the table, to not jump down their throats when something happens. Everyone makes mistakes. You may have cost the movie theater thousands of dollars that day. You know what? Lots of people have cost businesses lots of money, and people just make mistakes all the time. And so, it's part of the cost of doing business. And so you can throw people under the bus, or you can try to use it as a developmental opportunity. And your experience was that positive side.
Yeah, one of the important things as leaders, as we coach other folks too, is to help them when they have interactions. I'm oftentimes find myself, when individuals are having those negative interactions, of saying, well, how do you think it should have been handled? So that they think about how they would have dealt with it differently. So they hopefully don't perpetuate that same leadership style later. So they take the negative and turn it into a positive. I use another example. When I was in high school, one of my first jobs, I worked at a pizzeria in a small town that I lived in. And I got sick at school, like sick, had to go to the bathroom sick. And essentially, I called my manager because I had to work that evening at the pizzeria after work. And I said, hey, I'm going home sick. Like, I threw up in the bathroom. I'm not going to be able to come in tonight. And they basically said, either find someone to work or come to work sick. And I said, it's the middle of the school day. Like, all the other kids that work are in class. I can't find somebody to work. And they said, well, you either come to work sick then, or you're fired. And I said, I guess I'm fired then. And that was that. And I used that negative then as a positive later in life, because I looked at that and said, I don't want to be that. And that was important to me. But here's the thing about that. I only knew that because of other positive interactions I had had with other folks that I had worked with throughout my career, and obviously my parents and that sort of thing as well. If we don't have those interactions, then it's important that we as leaders help those individuals, because they may not have a lot of positive interactions. Again, you don't know their situation. Also, I use that as an opportunity to just encourage everybody to find as many mentors and as many folks that you can surround yourself with as possible, because some of them, as you said, John, are not going to be that great in some situations. So you want to have a very diverse group of folks that you can surround yourself with, so that you hopefully get some experiences on both sides to help you grow.
Yeah, I have a similar experience, teenage job, other than a paper route, my first real job. And, it was an interesting place. My boss was young, I'm sure well-meaning, well-intentioned, but the situation was my brother was getting married. So I was going to go to my brother's wedding and I requested it off a couple weeks in advance, kind of followed all the normal protocols. They scheduled me anyways. So then I just told them I can't do it. They said, get someone to cover you. I find someone to cover me. They end up flaking and not showing up. And so then they end up firing me for not showing up to work. So I literally get fired from my first real job for going to my brother's wedding. And, to this day, I'm flabbergasted by this, and it just kind of blows me away. And how dumb of them to do that. It's, I'm 43. This was when I was like 15 or 16. Right. So like, this is stuck with me, but it's definitely informed how I approach other people, and just, recognizing people have lives outside of work, especially a crappy, I think at the time I made like $4 an hour, right. It's like a crappy minimum wage teenage job. Like, people have jobs and lives outside of work. We need to honor that. We need to be as accommodating as we can. We need to be as understanding as we can. And in my case, I'd actually done everything the right way. It just didn't work out. And I ended up getting thrown under the bus for it. So let's look for opportunities to give people, be generous towards people, give people the benefit of the doubt with these past experiences. So all of these are, I think, great examples. I know you talk a lot about the power of habit building. So past experience in the form of habit that can then lead to current successes and future successes. Maybe talk to us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so we use habits in our lives all the time. Again, it's kind of the same scenario. We don't realize how much we actually do unless it's pointed out to us. I mean, if you just think about when you get ready in the morning, or when I leave to go to work, like, first off, your routine in the morning when you're getting ready and showering and everything, I guarantee you it's the same routine. But when I go to work, I exit my back door that goes into the garage. I turn around. This happens every day. I turn around every day. I shut the door. I push the garage door opener with my left hand. I go down the stairs. I get in my car. I push the button, because I have push button start on my car to start my car. As I'm pushing the garage door opener, if it's not already open, usually I've already opened it. Sometimes the music will come on, which means my wife was driving my car the night before, so I grumble and shut the music off because I don't listen to music in the morning. So, but you put the car in reverse and back out, and like before I clear the garage, I have my hand up on my visor on the remote for the garage door opener, and I'm pushing the button after I clear the garage, and I back out and I leave. So I go through those same interactions every single day, but I don't realize, I mean, I don't think about that I do it, but I do it in the exact same order, in the exact same time, exact same hands every single time. Well, the reason for that is that our brains just cannot deal with all of the tasks that we do. So they create essentially programs that execute. And sometimes if the program has to change, I know you've encountered this, certainly your listeners and viewers have probably encountered it. If you change jobs or your office moves locations or something, that's like a perfect example. You get in the car and you automatically start driving to the old office and you don't realize it till you're halfway there. That's because your brain executed the original program. It never can delete a program. It can only write a new one. So sometimes it gets confused and likes to reference back. So there's a guy who wrote a book called The Power of Habits. His name is Charles Duhigg, and he wrote about this. I highly recommend this book. It explains like a ton about habit building. He has a lot of examples. But he talks about this. He calls them habit loops, but essentially they're programs. And we can utilize those things as leaders and in business as well. And we should be, because what happens is if we can do those actions and behaviors every single day to create habits that we're doing in order to help us be more successful, and we really build it into a habit, then it makes it much easier to accomplish our goals every quarter, every year, whatever your goal timeline is that you're trying to accomplish, because setting those things in habits means you're sure to get them done. It kind of goes back to another thing I talk about is top 20% activities. Sometimes people call these high payoff activities. So it's that top 20% of all things you do every day that have the highest impact. So, and the reason I say 20%, so it's the Pareto Principle. So the 20% of activities account for 80% of your results. So if you can complete those 20%, then you're already way into your day. So if you can create habits surrounding those 20%, those things you definitely need to accomplish first every single day, and build those into habits, you're far more likely to be more successful and accomplish more each day and each week, each month, each year, etc., than you are if you're just going at it every day and randomly doing things and trying to accomplish things. But it'll make it much easier for you if you can build those things into habits. And we should be teaching our employees to do this as well. I mean, when you have a team that works for you, it's going to benefit you in the long run, because it's going to mean your team is more successful and is able to accomplish things more quickly, more efficiently, and in a better manner. So hopefully you get a better result overall, whether you're building a product or a process or whatever that might be.
Yeah, great explanation of the value of habits. And we've all experienced the New Year's resolutions and how hard it is to develop a good habit, how easy it is to lose habits, and how kind of automatic they can become. And so let's look for ways to develop good, healthy, meaningful habits over time. Don't try to bite off more than we can chew. Just try to do a little bit here and there. And I think a little bit goes a long way if we're just consistent. Consistency is the key to habit building, and it's the consistency to building upon past experiences, growing and learning from them to move into a positive future. It's not rocket science, but it is really, really hard to do, because we're humans and we're flawed, and we don't always see things through. And so as leaders, let's model that the best we can for our people. Let's hold them accountable and help them and support them in doing the same thing in terms of learning and growing, creating a growth mindset amongst our team, and helping them to establish good, meaningful goals and to develop meaningful habits to accomplish those goals. I think all of that will just lead to more effective teams, happier people that are more, productive and successful. Well, Darby, it has been a real pleasure. I note the time. I'm going to have to let you go here in just a minute. But before we close for today, I just wanted to give you a chance to share with listeners how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, your team, and then where they can find your book, and then give us a final word on the topic for today.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can visit my website. It's beindispensable.com, and that has all the information about my book. And you click on the links and order that. Also has all my social media links. I'm pretty much on everything, but I'm most active on LinkedIn, and you can just search for Darby Vannier and you'll find me. And I connect with most anybody on LinkedIn as well. So that's where you can find me at beindispensable.com. Yeah, I mean, as far as the topic goes, though, definitely, like I said, just keep in mind, my final piece of advice is just remember that aspect of the fact that everything that we do every day is going to affect us later in life, and everything your team has experienced throughout their life. So when they do something and you're like, why did they do it that way? Or why did they respond in that manner? The reason being is some experience that they have had in their career and in their life has caused them to do that. So try to be understanding and understand those things, ask the right questions, and help coach them along. And you'll hopefully all continue to grow together in business and in life. So.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Darby. It's really been a pleasure. I encourage listeners to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Darby can do for you. Check out the book. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week.